What's up, my fellow Shield Brothers? It's the Shield Brother here for the History Armada. I'm back. It's been a little bit, but I'm back with another episode. Today we're talking about a very important battle which happened on today, October 25th, 1415. It is the Battle of Agincourt. So, the Battle of Agincourt was a major English victory in the 100 Years' War that changed how battles would be fought forever. It took place on the 25th of October, 1415. In the county of Saint-Paul-Artois. England's unexpected victory at Agincourt against a numerically and physically superior French army soared English morale and prestige, as well as crippled France during this 100 Years' War, and started a new period of war during which the English power began enjoying great military success within France. So, before we get started, I want to tell you that I'm going to be using a lot of contemporary accounts for this. The Battle of Agincourt is well documented by at least 7 contemporary accounts, 3 of them being eyewitnesses of the battle. The approximate location has never been in dispute, and it is well believed to remain unaltered even after 600 years. Immediately after the battle, Henry summoned the heralds of both the armies, French and English, and who had watched the battle together, and with the principal French herald, settled on the name of the battle as Agincourt, or Azincourt at the time before it got changed. So after the nearest fortified place of the battle, 2 of the most frequently cited accounts come from Burgundian sources. One from Jean Lefebvre, who was present at the battle, and the other from Egorand de Monsterlet. The English eyewitness account comes from an anonymous man, believed to be written by a chaplain in the king's household, who would have been in the baggage train at the battle. A recent reprisal of Henry's strategy at Agincourt incorporates these 3 accounts, these 3 eyewitnesses, and argues the war has seen as a legal due process for solving this disagreement over claims to the French throne than anything else. So that's where I'm using these. It's a claim to the French throne, and I'm just letting you know I'm going to be using these contemporary accounts for the numbers and the references that I use in this video. So in 1413, the new King of England, Henry V, took the opportunity of a power struggle inside France to renew English claims to the French throne and land, and they invaded. His victory against a much larger force repeated the successes at the Battle of Crécy and Poitiers, enabling him to dominate northern France. So, to let you know where we're coming from, in 1396, England and France signed the 30-year Truce of Paris to end the long-running 100 Years' War. However, the French continued to support England's enemies within Scotland and Wales, and in 1403 started to raid several channel ports and vessels within the English Channel. Inside France, the intermittent insanity of King Charles VI, who was King of France at the time, prompted a power struggle between the 2 rival dukes of Orleans and Burgundy, with both sides appealing for English help. In 1413, Henry V came to the English throne and became King of England. He formed an alliance with Jean, Duke of Burgundy. The Duke promised to remain neutral in return for gaining land as Henry's vassal if he were to win. So that eliminated one of the problems, and here you can see the map of France at the time and the map of England. You can see where having the French support Scotland and Wales would be a problem for the English power. So, let's talk about the command of the 2 armies. So with one side of the French conflict being Burgundy neutralized, Henry prepared for war. In August of 1415, he sailed for Normandy with an army of 12,000 men. After a 6-week siege, he captured Harfleur with the loss of half of his men through casualties and mainly disease. Henry then marched overland towards English-held Calais. His men were marching through muddy land towards the English-held, and they also had dysentery. And upon marching back, they found that their way was blocked by a larger French army led by Charles d'Albert, and who was Constable of France. Henry drew up his army with the road to Calais passed through thick woods. So it had been raining for several days, and the fields and woods on either side were newly plowed, meaning that it was just thick clay mud. Placing his archers on either flank of this road, he placed either archers on either flank with this muddy road in the middle. He hammered stakes into the muddy road, and then he had more archers and dismounted knights in the center. He hammered rows of pointed stakes into the road, and when confronted by this narrow battlefield, the French formed up 3 divisions of battle, one behind the other, which you can see here. And you can see the 3 rows of the French army, and then the English archers on either side, and then Henry's division, and then the Duke of York and Camoys divisions. So the French formed up the 3 divisions, one behind the other. The first 2 consisting of dismounted men and some crossbowmen. The third was mounted knights. And after the first 2 armies had met each other, the French and the English, they stared at each other down the road. They just kind of had a stare off for a little while, which was estimated to be about 1 mile difference between them, or 1.6 kilometers between the 2 armies. And the French knew of Henry's youthful enthusiasm of battle and the attack. He was known for it being the one to always want to attack. So they hoped that they would get him to attack down this narrow road. Henry, decided to force a French attack, doing feints and then moving his army up ever so slightly so that there would be a shorter distance between the 2 to try and instigate the French to attack down this middle road here. And this trick did work. For unable to control his eager men, the French constable ordered an attack, which you can see here on this map as well. As the first battle advanced, mounted knights from either flank galloped past them from the 3rd division, rushing past the first 2 divisions. And the mounted knights galloped past them towards the English line of battle, under intense fire from the English and Welsh longbowmen. And they were quickly hampered by the weight of their armor, the muddy ground, the rows of stakes, and the unrelenting archer fire. They were soon in trouble. Modern historians are somewhat divided on how effective the longbow fire actually would have been against full plate armor of the time, with some modern texts suggesting that arrows could not penetrate especially the better quality steel armor, but other sources of our time suggest arrows could penetrate the armor, especially the poorer quality wrought iron armor. In any case, to protect themselves as much as possible from these arrows, the French had to lower their visors and lower their helmets, where the eye holes and the visor holes, their breathing holes, were the weakest points in the armor, so they had to look down and then try and move forward. And then they had to walk several hundred yards through thick clay mud, as well as walk past their fallen comrades and all the stakes put in the ground. Their armor already weighed 50 to 60 pounds, or roughly 23 to 27 kilograms, as well as gathering sticky clay all the way through the English lines. And they had been very easily, not easily, but they were well repulsed. The first wave, which was the initial cavalry attack, had been completely repulsed before the 1st Division even arrived, which you can see here on your map. If you look, you can see the block, that's the cavalry which has been repulsed. And then eventually the 1st Division does arrive. And the 1st Division has to march through the clay as well, over the bodies of the fallen cavalrymen, fighting their way through to the English line. Then they were attacked by the English archers, who were wielding axes, swords, and daggers, as well as the mallets they had used to put the stakes into the ground, and they flanked the 1st Division of French soldiers who arrived. Within minutes, it's recorded that the 1st Division of the French had been killed or captured, as well as the cavalry being repulsed. The 2nd French Division then surged forward, but fell back with heavy losses due to the intensive archer fire. According to contemporary English accounts, Henry was directly involved in the hand-to-hand combat, which you can see here on your left. Upon hearing that his youngest brother Humphrey, Duke of Gloucester, had been wounded in the groin, Henry took his household guard and stood over his brother in the front rank of the fighting until Humphrey could be dragged to safely, making a square around his brother on the very front lines. The king received an axe blow to the head, which knocked off a piece of the metal crown that formed part of his helmet, which you can see in the depiction on your left. At this point, Henry received reports that his camp a mile to the rear of the battle was under attack. In reality, it was just a group of peasants looking for plunder. But knowing that his small army could not fight on 2 fronts, and not knowing whether or not it was an actual reasonable force attacking his baggage train, he ordered that all of the prisoners that had been captured be executed because they were sparing a lot of manpower to guard all these French prisoners. So he ordered all the French prisoners that they had at the time to be executed. When the third and final French division of battle assaulted, they were thrown back easily. Henry ordered his few mounted men to then charge the French lines. The result was a rout, with more than 100 French noblemen, all supporters of the Orleans faction, either being killed or captured. Many of them were captured, because back then, ransom was a very popular thing, and the noblemen were especially keen to being able to exchange other noblemen for more money. So the English had been led very brilliantly by Henry in this defensive battle, but it was also the incoherent tactics and the foolhardiness of the French soldiers that had contributed greatly to their defeat. Henry had won against overwhelming odds. Here you can see the losses. The English lost 400 of their 6,000, where the French lost 5,000 of their 30,000. They still had a very large force left, but it was completely morale broken. So, you're saying that's cool, the English won, but why is that significant? Who cares about a battle from 603 years ago? Well, this battle is notable for the use of the English and Welsh longbow in very large numbers, with the English and Welsh archers forming up to 80% of Henry's army. The decimation of the French cavalry at their hands is regarded as an indicator and turning point of the decline of cavalry in warfare and the beginning of the dominance of ranged weapons on the battlefields, and the longbow defeats the armored knight. So until this time, the armored man had been the principal armored. It was the principal piece of battle. The armored man was what won battles. But here we see a turning point. And up to World War I, cavalry was still used. In World War I, we see a similar thing. Cavalry would be used, but it would be decimated by ranged weaponry. Because what do we use today? Ranged weaponry. Here is the turning point where we start moving away from armored men and swords to more ranged tactics and a lot more usage of longbows and crossbows. And as well as, it's just a cultural shift for the English, as Agincourt is one of England's most celebrated victories, along with the battles of Crécy and Poitiers. It was one of the most important English triumphs of the 100 Years' War. The battle is also the centerpiece of the play Henry V by William Shakespeare. So you can see how it was a cultural victory as well as a morale victory during the 100 Years' War. But mainly, I think it is significant to show the dedication and the heart of the English soldier, as well as the wit of King Henry V in his ability to form such a great defensive battle plan. And then, just as I said, the turning point to the usage of ranged weaponry up to modern day in our tactics of warfare. Thank you so much for tuning in for this. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something about the 100 Years' War as well as ranged warfare. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave me a like. If you didn't, go ahead and leave me a dislike. If you have a comment, suggestion, or concern, you can leave that down for me in the comment section down below. And this has been the Shield Brother for the History Armada, and as always, I'll catch y'all next time.